This episode of the Better Two podcast is brought to you by Kitty Mystic and DM Needham, author of My Days with the Dark Muse, as well as Love is Worth Waiting For. Hi, gang. Donna here. Thanks for tuning into the Better Two podcast. Today's guest is Dorothy Graham Odell. Dorothy and I talk about her book, Overcomer. And we also talk about bullying, being a step parent, life in general, being a parent, let's see, weight loss, weight, image, friends, fathers. There's really just a whole plethora of stuff we talk about. And she gives us the Canadian perspective, and I can give the United States perspective in the pandemic and how they are on lockdown number 6, where we were only on lockdown number 1. And this episode for Your Understanding is recorded at the end of January. So by the time you hear it, things will have changed, hopefully a little bit. But still, I think it's very insightful to be able to dig in to what the topic at hand, topic we were talking about. So on that note, this is going to be part 1 of the podcast because it's another 2-hour podcast or close to it. So I figure we should split it up. So enjoy the show. Hi, Dorothy. How are you doing today?
I am amazing. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. I'm doing really good, actually. So you are newly married. So congratulations. I don't know how new, but you say you're newly married. How long?
2 years.
Oh, well, that's not really new at this point.
Well, I just noticed that I had put newly on my profile on Matchmaker. So I'm like, oh, I better go change that.
It's okay. It's okay. We'll forgive you.
Hey, it's been a marriage and a pandemic. It's lasted. That's the best part.
Yeah, getting newly married in a pandemic, I would say that would have to be the true test of love.
It has been a true test in every sense of the word.
And you're also a stepmom.
Yes, I am. I have an amazing, witty 10-year-old that is probably going on 40. Yes.
So is he living with you guys too? Is that part of the pandemic fun?
No. He lives mostly with his mom, but he's with us every other weekend and one day during the week. But when the pandemic hit, I'm the only parent out of 4 of us that could potentially work from home. So I was with him for 2, maybe 3 months the first time. On the lockdown, and let's just say that it was definitely an exercise in patience.
Becoming an instant step parent or an insta parent is a very interesting thing because I went through that myself. I became an instant parent of a 4 and a 6-year-old.
Oh, wow.
And there were 2 little girls. And it was one of those things where it happened pretty quick.
Yeah.
So I can feel for you because all of a sudden your world is completely flipped and you're like, wait a second, you change how you talk. You catch yourself more if you cuss. All of a sudden, all those things that you used to think were funny, you're looking going, wait a second, that he's going to pick up or she's going to pick up on that. Can't watch that now. So yes. I often joke because at the time we had Beavis and Butthead were popular. And we didn't have cable, but my sister-in-law sent me a videotape of it and I'm watching it without the kids. And I'm just like mortified. I'm like, oh my gosh, my kids will never be able to see this. And by this point, they're 8 and 10. And after I left, my friend had it on and I laughed my fool head off because I wasn't so worried about the developing minds of children.
Well, I think if I could speak for just about every parent out there now, that at one point we had to let our children be parented by like Xbox for a little bit, just for some sanity for both the child and us during this pandemic. And Fortnite, the creators of Fortnite did really good, especially, charging our kids for the damn skins. Every skin known to man the kid has. So it was such an, I really admire his brain when it goes to, you know, wanting his own YouTube channel and things like that. His mom, no, his mom doesn't want that. And I'm like, yes, Brady, let's make our own channel. Let's do this, you know, let's make our own game. He's got the mind for this. Yes, the kid's only 10 years old, but he has got a mind for games that is unreal. And with his, okay, so the kid loves hockey as well. So he has every name out there with all the stats. He's
Wow.
got every single car out there. So between cars and hockey, we could come up with some kind of game and put it out there. And then we could be making all this money. And instead of buying skins, people could like different hockey jerseys and different car models. You know, I think we have something here. I just need the rest of the parents to get on board.
Well, yeah. The only thing about the hockey jerseys is you got to watch out for the trademark.
True.
But partnerships can be a very profitable thing.
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. Like anybody in the NHL, yeah, NHL want to come talk to us? I'll give you my phone number at the end of the show.
So, having a 10-year-old, this kind of brings us to your moment, though, because, you know, you had to overcome being bullied at school.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
so I think all of us have gone through some experience. How horrendous was it for you? I mean, I hate to put it that way, but
it was pretty bad. Like I would come home crying every day, and then it got to such a point where I ended up having this like, well, F you attitude, because I was just, it was insane, and it happened to be the same guys over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. And so I spent pretty much my entire public school career from 2 to 8 in public school, where it was just every day it was the same thing. And you know, you get to a point where you just hit a low patch in your life and you just believe what these guys are telling you, and then you just develop like this attitude where, fine, I don't need you in my life, right? And then you tend to shut down and you tend to close up, and that did happen. I mean, it's taken a lot of therapy and a lot of different things to get through that, but it was mostly bullied for my weight. You know, being overweight, being that girl that nobody wanted to hang out with, and yeah, I had a couple friends in school, but it wasn't like they would go to bat for you. It was just like they were just there, you know. And I can only remember going to one of their houses. So it wasn't like a lasting friendship. I haven't even, like, I'm Facebook friends with 2 out of the 3. So it was, you know, it's just one of those things.
I get it. I mean, I can sit here and go through high school, and I remember it was sophomore year. My mom had already moved up to Shreveport, and I was living with my grandmother at the time. And this girl, you know, girls can be catty. Girls can be super catty. And this girl comes over to me. She was kind of an acquaintance of mine, but she was in our group that hung out. And she says to me, well, if your mother loved you, you would be living with her, not down here with your grandmother.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, I still remember that comment. And I mean, I'm way past high school, but it's still something to this day that still just kind of stabs me in the heart. And then from there, I went to a public school, so no more uniform. Now I'm dealing with boys. And it's like, I have acne, I have braces, and I'm getting harassed by boys. And I was chesty, but that didn't matter. It was still, I was fresh meat, because now I have this accent from New Orleans. I don't fit in with how I look or dress or anything. And I had boys picking on me, and I remember coming home crying, and my mom's like, I got my own stuff to deal with. I don't have time for you. So it's just like, you have to try to navigate that yourself. And I know you understand that, because I mean, I'm sure at times there were times when nobody's going to listen to me. So I'm just going to let it be. I'm just going to sit here and suffer.
Well, it actually, now that I'm thinking about it, and it's funny because I've met some incredible people lately, and we've developed a book about body image, which isn't out yet, but it's still in the final stages of getting edited. And the problems that led to. Like, I never even told anybody in my entire life that I would like binge and purge, because I was just, so wrapped up into that, what that body image meant. And, you know, um, stuffing my face and then feeling guilty about it. So going and throwing it up afterwards. And I, when my mother reads my chapter, she'll find out that happened. But till then, or when she listens to this podcast.
Yeah.
But it was like, because my grandmother was overweight, her dad was overweight, my mom was overweight. My dad was overweight pretty much for a while until the end, when he got his cancer. But it was just, I come from a long line of big people, and that's what they did. They celebrated with eating. And still to this day, like I'm breaking the habits, but it's not easy. We need food to live,
Right.
but it's the choice of food that we make, right?
Well,
So,
yeah.
And everything in moderation, because there's no way you can say, okay, I'm cutting off, like after 45 years, I'm cutting everything off, no sugar, no whatever, and be able to sustain that for the rest of my life.
No, I mean, I went on, after my husband passed, I went on Weight Watchers, and I realized at a certain point, I think it was like at the 8-month mark, and even though I had lost weight, I'm like, this is not sustainable, because I've cut certain things out of my diet completely, and it's not that, and I'm craving it. And it's not that it's, I shouldn't have it, sure, but it's more about learning how to eat healthier.
Yeah.
I mean, I was taught by my mom, by watching her, to learn to overeat because it was comforting. And I'm gonna say this. So the high school girl, when I moved up to Shreveport, I was 185 my senior year, and people were like, "Oh my gosh!" And nobody ever knew it because I was tall. But my mom would consistently say, "Well, you'd be so much prettier if you lost weight." Okay. So then I move out and I'm living with my friends, and I don't have the stress of my mother, and I'm down to 135 pounds. And I'm telling you, we ate junk food. We ate pizza. We ate fast food. We ate Oreos and Doritos every night, and Coke, had a Coca-Cola. And I was down all this weight, and I come back home and my mom looks at me and she goes, "You're too skinny now.
My gosh.
You're gaunt." And I'm like, okay, so which is it? And I mean, I had gotten scouted. But the funny thing is, I recently found an audio cassette of me when I was 21 years old. And I still have a cassette player. And so I got to listen to myself. And even then at 21, my mother was trying to blackmail me to lose weight. Because she's like, and I was like, I think I was a size 14, maybe size 12. So it's not like I was a size 20. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but
Right.
You know what I'm getting at. So I look back at those pictures and I'm like, I wasn't fat. But so she's trying to blackmail me with buying me a leather dress because it's the 80s and that would have been so cool. And she's like, "If you lose this weight, I'll buy you this dress." And it's just like, and I'm listening to myself on this tape, and I'm hearing the depression in my voice, because once again, I'm not worthy. And this carries on throughout my life. And it's still an issue because somebody has drilled it into you. And I had the opportunity to have, to see somebody that I really wanted to see, and I backed out of it because I wasn't comfortable enough with me.
Yes, I totally resonate with that. As a matter of fact, I just shared with a friend of mine the other day. I don't even remember who it was. I used to work at Pizza Hut back, putting myself, really?
Yeah.
Putting myself through college, working at Pizza Hut. And there was this guy that worked there. He was like hot. He was like 6'5". I'm like 5'5" right now, but he was like so good looking, and he always had a girlfriend. And I felt bad for him because his girlfriend dumped him. And so I had what's the chance of him actually listening to this? Because still to this day, he doesn't know it was me. I went to the floral shop and across the street from the high school, and I had a flower arrangement delivered to work and said, "From your secret admirer." Right?
Wow. Okay.
Oh my God, I was freaking out. So he was like asking our manager, "Hey, who do you know? Do you know who this was from?" Thank God I hadn't talked to her before that. And I'm like freaking out. So every time he comes around me, he's just being a dick. So I told him off. I'm like, "Get away from me." Like, stop it. And I'm feeling like, what the hell did I do? Why did I do this? Because I like to make people feel good. I like to make people feel loved and appreciated. And that was my act of love, or,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I was just like, never to be ever found out. But he was just would not stop it. Finally, I told him to get out. I'm like, he even was there like an hour past his shift. And we used back then, the good old days before, before we were married and had to have responsibility, we'd play cards till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, have a couple drinks. We paid for them, by the way. Pizza Hut, we paid for those drinks. And anyway, so have fun after hours. Well, he just was like, I'm like, just get out of here, because I couldn't take it anymore. I was just like so embarrassed. I'm like, why would I ever do this? But anyways, yeah, I had no idea. Like well, I don't have no idea what he does now, or if I'm sure he's probably married. But there was a guy, the delivery guy, really good looking as well. Didn't think nothing about it. He told me one day that he got into a car accident. He was driving down the main road where I lived and saw me walking and hit a pole. I'm just like, seriously? I never in a million years. Like, he was good looking too. I was like,
Hmm.
shit, I would have went out with him too. Now that I'm thinking about it, but I didn't even allow myself to be put out there in front of, like, to even say, hey, oh, well, why don't we go out or something like that, right? Because I was overweight and I didn't
Right.
didn't feel confident, didn't feel comfortable, didn't feel worthy enough, I guess. And that's it has stopped me in a lot of ways. Now I'm just, and not because I'm married. Like, my husband could care less what I look like. He loves me the way I am. And but like I still take care of myself. I'm actually taking better care of myself now than what I was back then. The health
Hmm.
problems that we have in my family and things like that. But it's, for me, it's not to attract him. But I in the end, I want him to say, yeah, I got a damn hot looking wife, and look at her.
Hmm.
So, and now that I'm doing all that I'm doing, he's just like, this is not who he married, but that's okay.
But I mean, here I was going to say something. I want to go back, not to the. I want to go back to the binge purge thing. Wait, and I can say honestly, I was there in my mind that I'm like, okay, maybe if I can do that, I can take the weight off. The
Mhm.
thing is, I couldn't make myself gag. I could not do it to save my life. And I mean, I guess in a way it was a blessing because it is an eating disorder. But isn't it
Mhm.
so wrong that our culture makes us feel so inadequate?
Mhm.
Because
It
I'm, go ahead.
Yes, it's ridiculous. And oh my gosh, thank you for saying that, because I was at my mom had just gotten out of the hospital recently, so I was picking up a prescription for her. I never go to the magazines ever. I did that day. And the front cover of Health magazine was Hunter McGrady, plus size model. So I came home, made a post, and said, this should be the norm. Why do we all have to be a size 2 and that be acceptable?
Uh,
This should be a norm. And I'm trying to get her on my show, so we'll see what happens.
this is gonna sound really bad, but I mean, in the late '80s, I got scouted. I think I was about 145 at the time. I got scouted, and I was told that if I got to Dallas to go check them out, to come to the agency. So I was like, okay. So I went, and they tell me, well, you need to lose 10 pounds. And we're going to get you catalog work. And I didn't understand that catalog work was actually more lucrative than being in fashion. And
Mhm.
I took an affront to it because it's like, oh, you want me to lose weight? So here we are still with the weight gain. And I mean, even when I did a role, I had a good role as an actress, and it was playing an ex porn star. Um, but a drunk ex porn star, which I didn't end up getting. I mean, I did the role, and then we recast and reacted, and it was an independent production that went through so many changes that the executive producer actually wanted the role, so she got it. So I became a marketing person. But anyway, she tells me before, she's like, well, if you lost some weight.
Ugh.
So it's one of those things where it's like, why, I remember when Emmy first came on the you know, in the 90s for Lane Bryant. She was like the first plus size model. And I'm like, you know, had this happened back then, I would have been okay.
Yep.
But, and I'm sure, you know, for me, I look back at those pictures that my mom was telling me I looked fat, and it's like, I wasn't. But that still haunts me now, because after my husband died, I did manage to lose 30 pounds. I still have more to lose, but he didn't care how I looked. He was legally blind. He didn't care how I looked. It didn't matter to him. I could, you know, dye my hair purple and he wouldn't care. He didn't care. He loved me, like you were saying, for me. So therefore, it didn't matter. But being single again, it's like it opens up all that, those cans of worm, you know, that can of worms of my weight. If we ever got to a point in a relationship where I have to take my clothes off, where am I going to feel? Where am I going to be at? So I know that's TMI, but I'm sure you understand. You've been married 2 years.
Yeah. 2 years. Yeah. Well, it's funny because I still insist on the lights off.
There you go.
And he, like, I mean, whatever. There's always in the morning too where it's sunlight, but still, it's not like it's glaring in his face.
Right. It's not like the light show I got going in front of my face. But
exactly. And that is hilarious that you said that, because it's just the way it is, you know, and it should be okay for that. And in the moments, and I will admit, even now, like if I'm having one of my self-conscious days, it's just like, no, stay away from me type thing, right? And he could care less. It's just like, he's a man. He's just like, let's go. Just what? Like, no.
Well, I mean, John would tell me, because we would go down to Woodstock, which is a town that's the next town over. And he's like, I'm like, I need to like change clothes or do something with my hair. No, it wasn't that I was going to put makeup on. He's like, well, who do you know? He's like, you don't know anybody. I'm like, sure enough, almost every time we would go down to Woodstock, I'd run across somebody I would know. And it was just like, oh, yeah. Hi, how you doing? I'm like, oh, no. You don't see me. I'm not here. Just, and he's like, well, you don't know anybody. I'm like, just stop, honey. So go ahead.
That. No, I was just gonna say I love that, you know, because that is so true. We could go to Walmart. Walmart's like 5 minutes for me. I could go in my sweatpants, and I never leave the house in sweatpants. The one time I decide to is when I find business associates, right?
Oh, I have a story about that. It's with a dearly departed friend. Back in the late 80s, my friends and I all decided to have a Duran party. A Duran party, which, yes, this is going to sound cheesy as anything. Anyway, we were dressed up as our favorite members, which was just ridiculous. And one girl, she wasn't a girl, she was older than us. My friend Angela, who's rest in peace. She's like, okay, well, since we're way over here, nobody's going to see anything. So she dons the Duran headband. So we got to the grocery store and we were getting ready to leave. And there is her ex-husband's best friend. Hi, Angela, how you doing? She's like, I have never been more embarrassed in my life. The dog thinks so. So, yeah, I mean, there are things where you think you're okay, you're going to be okay. And lo and behold, there's that moment.
Yes.
So.
That is awesome, though. I love that. Duran, that is one of the top, those are one of the top artists back when I was younger. Yeah,
they were. And they're a pretty cool group of guys to hang out with. So, but yeah.
You've hung out with them?
Yeah, but I'm not going into detail. So, yeah. Nothing, it's all PG. I will say that it's all PG, nothing bad. So,
right. I love that, though.
I got to meet NXS too, so. Nice. I've been fortunate. So, yeah, I've had a wild life. But anyway, this is not about me. This is about you. So, you wrote a book called Overcomer. Let's talk about that.
Yes. So, at the beginning of the pandemic, I decided to write this book that had been brewing for about 5 or 6 years. And I kept putting it off, and God's like, no, girl, you need to write it. So, to make a long story short, I decided, okay, so I sat down and within 3 months had the book wrote,
Nice.
had it out there for the world to see January of the 2021. So it is a life story, my life story about being bullied and low self-esteem and the abusive relationships that I had been in. And my uncle took his life Christmas Day 24 years ago. So I speak about that as well. And my parents have been pretty much ill as far back as I can remember with either heart, diabetes, stroke, whatever. And my dad actually just recently passed away of cancer 4 months ago.
Sorry.
So it's been a challenge, but the book itself shares most of that. I mean, he was diagnosed with cancer after the book came out, so there'll have to be a sequel, I guess, or something, anyways. And so yeah, I just share my life experiences of going through what I did, and sharing nuggets of how I overcame that. And for me, it's just people goes like, how do you overcome all that? Because that is a lot to take in. But the thing of it is, I just keep putting one foot in front of the other. To me, there's no, what are you going to do? You're just going to keep going, right?
Right.
So that is exactly, that's exactly what I do, and just never giving up, persistence, and just never giving up. So.
Well, you can't give up because I mean that's the thing. It's like you've dealt with somebody with suicide. I've dealt with somebody with suicide, and it's like you can try to convince somebody that it's going to get better, and some people are never going to hear it. You
Right.
have if you have it at your core that you're going to make it through, you will.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, I wrote the book because I, in those dark moments, and we all go through dark moments. We think that we're alone. We think that no one cares. We think that no one else has ever gone through this. And I just wanted basically for people to know that they're never alone. Just reach out. I am a phone call or a DM away, to help anybody to get through those moments. And it's really by sharing my life story, people can say, okay, well, if she can do it, so can I. And trust me, I am nobody special. I'm just some chick decided that I was going to get my story out to help other people. And that's the only difference. I never gave up, and I just kept going. I come from, well, I guess Windsor's not that small, but a small enough town compared to Chicago. I was in Chicago actually in December. So it was, that town is wild.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I live 80 miles outside of it in a small town.
Oh,
So,
really?
but yeah, most people will still say I live in Chicago. So,
Yeah. Well, that's funny. My girlfriend actually lives in Niles, so it's
okay.
supposed to be outside of that
Mm-hmm.
Chicago, but to get through there, you have to go through Chicago.
Chicago. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I used to live off the lake back in the 90s, and it was awesome. I mean, the most wicked thing is when the lake freezes, the
Mhm.
top layer, you can hear the water underneath. So it's always cracking and everything. And it's just ice as
That's
far as you
cool.
can see it, but it's like the coolest thing. However, when it's smelt season, the fish decide to come on the beach and die. And so it becomes very stinky, especially because you don't have air conditioning in your apartment.
Right.
So
Well, go
yeah.
catch the smelt and eat it.
Some people eat it. I mean, there's actually a smelt fry in my town that I live in, but there's also a cow in the middle of town, not a live cow, a statue of a cow. So that should tell you everything you need to know about where I live.
I'll have to Google it because I'm clueless. Yeah, that was the first time I've been in that area.
Well,
So,
the first time I came up from Indiana, and my friend drove me past Buckingham Fountain, and this tells you it was the early 90s. And I'm like, oh, look, it's the Married with Children fountain. And she's like, what? I'm like, well, that's the fountain. She goes, it's Buckingham Fountain. I'm like, oh, okay. Like
who
I didn't,
knew?
yeah, who knew? I'm a tourist. What can I say? It took me a while to get to the point where I didn't say Illinois. I mean, it's Illinois, but everybody, there's that S there.
Yeah,
Yeah, you got that silent S. So
that was
what
hilarious.
makes you, do you feel better now that you put your story out?
I do feel better. and actually writing my story, like I've been through therapy, obviously, for, the relationship and things like that. And well, I shouldn't say obviously, because a lot of people don't. And I want to take away that stigma that it is, you're crazy if you seek mental health, because being inside of an abusive relationship where you're told that you're stupid and that you're no good and no matter what you do, it's never right. And you could, heaven forbid, if you changed your mind at the last minute, that was just something that should never have happened, right?
Right.
So when you go through that, and then you think, okay, well, how bad of a person am I that, I can't do anything right, and reprogram that to rewire it. Um, I'm not going to say that I didn't have things in the relationship that I could have done differently. I'm not going to say that I take responsibility for the stuff that happened, but to write that story, it was like another layer of the onion being peeled off and being healed. So in that regard, I feel better. It's just now how to get it to the masses, because being from a small town, it's no one knows who Dorothy Graham is, and so that's why I'm out here, sharing my story and hoping to encourage and inspire other people, and just getting the word out there that this book exists and that it's here to help.
Well, I think the younger generation, I mean, yes, I've been very open that I've been in therapy since my parents split on and off throughout my life. And I think it's a great thing. I'm not one of the ones that, and it's okay if people take medication, but I've always been a talk therapy person. I don't do well with medication, period.
Yeah.
So I've always been more into the talk therapy, but I think the younger generation is more open to therapy.
Yes.
They're more open to having clear mental health, where our generation wasn't necessarily that way.
That is so true. And I have seen my mom go through different things, and seeing, like, we had to put her mom into a retirement home on my birthday last year, because she has got dementia. So, and just some things that have come up within the last year, and I can really see why my mom is the way she is. My mom is a very loving person, but as long as you get past the guard, like the guard is here, you have to get past that guard, right? And several times I've said to her, well, why don't you just talk to somebody? And then when my dad died, I didn't realize how bad her depression got. She hid it from me until she couldn't hide it from me anymore. And I had begged her to talk to somebody. Even I said, even one of my coaching friends who lives in the Wisconsin area, I'm like, talk to her, and she's adamant. She does exactly what the doctor tells her to do, which I love doctors. I have great respect for the medical profession, but you need to get outside of the big pharma. And, and I was on antidepressants for a little bit when I was in that relationship, but I quickly got off because I didn't like how it was making me feel. I hate taking pills to begin with, and it was just something that I didn't want to do. But I mean, it is there for a reason to help those people.
But it's kind of a mask in some cases. I mean, some people do legitimately medication, but sometimes we hand out medication so easy because I don't have to confront what the problem is. Right. My husband had a long-term illness, and I remember after he passed, our primary care doctor telling me, you don't realize the stress and anxiety you've been under for the last 5 years. And it was just like, what are you talking about? And I don't know that your mom consciously was aware of what she was going through. I mean, I think when you're in a caregiver position, you tend to just, it's what's happening. You go with the flow. You have to do it and you deal with it.
Yeah.
Kind of what you were saying before. You keep going one step at a time.
Yep. Well, and it's funny that you said that, because that's exactly how I lived out my childhood. When your mom's on the couch, it's too exhausted to do anything, you take care of what's needed to take around. I've been cooking since I was 3 years old. Wow. It's just one of those things that you do. Now, my dad worked full time. My mom was sick a lot of the time. And then my dad got sick. I was the only one doing things, right? So
Yeah.
it's, you live in that constant state of chaos, and you think it's normal because that's all you know. And it wasn't until just recently that I found another friend that her mom had cancer when she was very young, and she grew up with her mom with that lifetime illness until her mom passed away. And she goes, "That's all I knew, Dorothy. It was
Yeah.
being in a constant state of chaos, you know." And I didn't realize how bad I was until every morning when I woke up, I would check my phone to see if there was a message from my parents to see if one of them was ill. My dad died September 14th of 2021, and since then I have not picked up the phone every morning to see that. But when he was alive, that's what I would do every morning. And that was just how I was programmed, right? It was just one of those things. And that's what I was naturally, and I didn't even dawn on me that I knew I was doing it, but I didn't realize the significance of it, I guess is what I could say.
It was a program. It was a program response. It becomes a certain thing. It's like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. I used to say every time I turn around, something happens, and my husband would say, "Quit turning around." And going back to what you're saying, I have a friend and she listens to the show all the time. And she tells, I was talking to her about my life one day and she's like, "Well, how did you get through that? How did you handle that?" She's like, "This is crazy. I can't believe you lived through this." And it's kind of like, it was life. You don't think when you're going through it, it's your life. You don't see it as anything different. It wasn't until I got older that I saw other girls with their mother having a solid relationship that I was like, oh, so this isn't really healthy. Even though part of me already knew that, it was just a whole nother whammy because, and I'm sure you've gone through this when you have a friend whose mom and them are so tight and they do things together and they have this bond and you're like, okay, so that, yeah, I can't have that. I wish I could. So you gravitate to other people that are like mother figures, but you're trying to fill this void.
Yeah. Well, that's funny you said that because I had a spiritual mother that was older than my mother. And so before full disclosure, I love my mother and my mother and I have like a better relationship now than when we were growing up because my mom and I were exactly the same. So we would butt heads a lot. And so we have learned to appreciate each other for who we are and, not look at the past hurts, right? We've let that go because my mom would try and sabotage every diet that I was on as well, and things like that. And
so there was a touch of competition.
Well, now that you say that, yes. And I had she's never going to hear this. So
if she does, we're sorry, Mom.
We're sorry. But I had a boyfriend at one time that said, I didn't tell him anything about my parents and I never brought guys home. You had to be pretty important in order for me to bring you home because I was very protective of my parents and no one's getting through to them at all. So we had him over for dinner one day and I didn't say nothing. And we got back to his apartment and he goes, "It's like it's a competition. She has to try and outdo you." And I'm like, I never even really thought of that until he said it that way. And I didn't say nothing about him, about my mom, nothing. And I'm just like, wow, for somebody who has never even met my mom till today, that was like a real eye opener. Mm-hmm. And if you question her about it, she's like, "Well, I didn't do that. I didn't do that." So she doesn't do it maliciously or consciously, it's subconsciously. And the last year that we've gone through with her mom, I can see where she gets it from. So I know it's not malicious with my mom. My mom doesn't have a mean bone in her body, but it's funny how those dynamics played out. And yeah, like, so I said to her, I'm doing this. I'm changing my eating habits, and I plan on losing 75 pounds this year. So I've spoken out and so people can hold me accountable. And she's like, "Oh well, don't do it too fast, and don't do this, and yeah. I'm just like, oh my gosh,
step off." Just step off. Let's stop, Mom. No, I get it. I get it. I mean, my mom liked to compete, and I didn't really realize it until I got a little older. The funny thing is, speaking of people not knowing, my dad's mom, the first time my husband met my dad's mom, I always thought my grandmother was this nice lady and da 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 da. Even though now looking back, she liked to put people against each other, cousins against cousins, spouses against, she always took the guy's side. Even
Yeah.
she liked my husband better than me at one point, which is just insane.
Oh.
But the first time they met, my husband looked at me afterwards. He goes, "Your grandmother's a pistol." I'm like, "Excuse me? Your grandmother's a pistol. I wouldn't want to cross that woman and save my life." I'm like, "Okay." I didn't see her that way. By the time because she came to live with us. This is how much of a saint this man was. That my husband was. After Katrina, we had both my grandmothers living with us. So we had an 89-year-old and a 75-year-old. It was like having two kids because they would tell on each other.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they would phone. I came home one day from work and they had dropped the cordless phone. And so I know they've dropped the cordless phone because they can't get the battery cover back on all the way. So, I mean, it sounds like I'm talking to two kids because I'm like, okay, so who dropped the phone? I didn't do it. I guess the cat dropped the phone. I guess. Okay.
Wow.
So sometimes, it was like having two kids, and he was okay with having the 2 grams for a while, but it was just like, wow, I can't believe you're this patient. But
yeah. Well, that gives me hope though, because my dad was exactly the same way. And so the way you're explaining it, it's almost kind of like we've met before because we basically have parallel lives, Donna.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like my parents brought my grandmother into their home 6 years ago, and she was living here in Windsor by herself, but she was falling all the time. So I had a family meeting without me, told me to hurry up and get here, then had a family meeting without me for them to have discussed that, my mom and her brother agreed that my grandmother should move in with my mom. And my dad is a saint because he agreed to it. That man going through chemo and radiation treatments, cleaning up after my grandmother, and the things that man had to pick up, no man should have had to pick up. And while going through cancer treatments.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's not another man alive that would ever put up with this shit. Not and like shit literally. So it was just like it's like, there is not one person out there that would be this patient. Like I couldn't even ask my husband to do that because I know what the answer would be. So it's just it's ironic that there are good men out there. Not to say that my husband isn't a good man.
No, but I mean
he has his limitations.
I mean, I remember my grandmother went to the bathroom, and this was my mom's home. She went to the bathroom and she had a walker and everything, but she goes to the bathroom, she's in the toilet, and we hear this thud in the bathroom. So I go to open the door. She goes, "No, you can't open the door." I'm like, okay. She's got her hand holding the door, so I can't get in. And I'm like, "Grandma, you're going to have to let us in so we can get you up." "I don't want John to see me naked." And John says really loudly, "I don't want to see you naked either." Finally, she acquiesced, and we got her dressed and got her up. But it was just kind of like, how do you deal with this? And I mean, after she passed, she had moved out. And I didn't know, but she had stuffed dirty diapers in the closet in the trash bag because she didn't want anybody to know. And it's like, I guess, going back to the weight loss thing, I guess as we get older, there is a certain humility about that because they were, it's weird looking at your parents. And I know you've gone through this and your grandparents and seeing them age. I mean, granted, we've aged as well, but it's a whole different thing because you were used to them being so vital and so virile and so strong, and then they're not.
Yeah. Well, that's funny. I don't age. I don't see myself age. I can see everybody else age, but I don't see myself age. I look in the mirror and it's not like I see myself as a 12-year-old girl, obviously, but I don't think I did, that 10-year challenge that they had on Facebook a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. So I put my 10-year challenge up there and everybody's like, you haven't aged at all. I'm like, thank you. But my husband has to say that I am an old woman and gets his son going with him on that. And it pisses me off because I know I don't look old. He is a year older than I am. And for him to call me an old lady, like it just about sends me into orbit because I'm not. I have been told my entire life I look 25 years younger than what I actually am. And, so that's one of those things that.
I get it. I mean, I had a guest from Australia on here one night and we're talking and she's like, well, no, you couldn't have lived in the 70s. You're my age. I'm like, how old do you think I am? And she's like 37. I'm like, well, thank you very much. But no, I said, I'm actually 50. I was 53 at the time. So I know I don't look 54, but I can look at myself and of course, I'm my own worst critic. But I think we've aged, the whole thing about, well, why is Gen X aging differently? Well, because we don't have the freaking bouffant hairdo and the polyester clothes. That's why. I mean,
Remember our hair was like,
yeah,
the big hair, like the 80s hair where like you take a thing of hairspray.
Yeah, Aquanet, turn your hair upside down. Aquanet, concrete in a can. The cheapest concrete in a can, 99 cents, and you were good. My friends and I live with two other girls, and we had this, the full-length mirror that was attached to the door. And if we were going to the club, it was one on top, one in the middle, and one sitting on the floor, all doing our makeup. There's no special lighting or anything. And then it's like, okay, I'm going to do my hair now. So disperse. And then you come back and do some more. And the next one it was just the whole process. Yeah. The whole process. Black eyeliner, it was a different time. A good time.
Those were the good old days.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to somebody the other day. It's like, do you realize all the stuff that we could do that you couldn't do today? I mean, if you went by the only way you were going to find out if somebody didn't answer their phone is either go by where you knew they hung out at or stop by their house. And if they weren't there, you were SOL. There was none of this tracking down.
Yeah.
And when you think about the bullying factor, I think, even though we had it bad, I kind of think sometimes it's 10 times worse now because you can't get away from it.
Yeah. Well, especially with cyberbullying, and things like that. Like my nephew, he'll be 20 in a couple weeks in March 15th. And he not only got it at school, he got it from his stepbrother as well. So the kid, he would be in tears. And then when we brought it to my brother's attention, my brother's like, well, I'll fix the other kid. Right. And it's just, I feel bad for him because he's always been picked on as well. He was very skinny though. Oh my, he's still skinny. His like arms and legs are like a toothpick, but these kids have always got to tease you, either too big or you're too small, or you're gay or you're straight or
your hair doesn't
got purple hair.
Yeah.
It's nowadays it is 10 times worse, and I can't imagine growing up now because even my 10-year-old will come home and he'll be crying because some kid picked him up on the out on the recess, and I was just like, are you kidding? I'm like, do I have to go down to that school? And I'm okay to stand guard,
Yeah.
And especially when he comes home and he's crying, like, and my husband's like, oh, suck it up. And I'm like, okay, there's a time to say suck it up. And then there's a time. And I said, I'm telling you right now, because this other kid had pushed him, I said, teach him how to fight back then. Because if the kids are just going to do that, I get there's a zero tolerance. Well, there's a zero tolerance unless it's my kid. Then they get to, go and do whatever they want. But I'm just like, you got to start teaching him something because, his feelings are hurt. And if he's hurt now, what's it going to be like when he's like 15, 16 years old?
Well, I interviewed somebody on the podcast who was 14, and by 16, he tried to commit suicide by leaping off a building. And I mean, at 14, he's like, I just want to fit in. I want to be popular. I want that perfect Facebook picture. And even when he got it, it still wasn't fulfilling. So what are we teaching? How do we teach our kids to handle the stresses of life better? I mean, I've talked before on the show about that it should have been taught a long time ago, but we should have some mental health classes in school.
Totally agree.
And dare I say, trying to get along with people. I mean, we have to accept differences. What you see on Instagram or what you see in a magazine is not necessarily what you're going to get.
Absolutely. Totally agree. Yeah. There definitely has to be, just don't do that. No, let's teach our children the right way, put those programs in place. And get them the help that they need to get past it instead of just putting a Band-Aid on it and things like that. Like, yeah.
Well, I mean, when you're talking about him, your stepson getting tripped, and if you take this to school, you can almost hear the statement of, "Oh, boys will be boys."
Mm-hmm.
Well, why do boys have to be boys? And here's the thing. I'm going to say, I think for us, and I don't know how, I think we're in the same generation. We're pretty close. Yeah. For us, girls were catty, but we weren't violent. Nowadays, girls are, I think one time in my whole growing up life, I saw a fight at a mall. My grandparents had taken me to the mall and these girls were just going at each other. And I was just like mortified. And a few years ago, John and I went to the mall and there were girls fighting out in the parking lot. And I'm just like, when did we become so agitated and violent about things?
That's a good question. I'm not sure exactly when that happened, but I mean, you're right. It's out there. And what are we teaching? Of course, if you, through this pandemic, if you look at some people's Facebook posts, ready to go to bat, whether you're vaxxed or unvaxxed, don't even get me started with that.
No, I know. I mean, it's just,
it's like you can see where it comes from. Sometimes it is actually their parents. Not that we should blame everything on their parents, but like the one kid that was really bullying my stepson. So I was talking to my son's mom and she's like, well, if you happen to see their parents, is every other word out of their language is the F word. And John, we'll say the kid's name is Johnny, get your ass over here, get in the car type thing. So the kid's getting it from home, learning it there, bringing it to the schoolyard. So I don't know. I think we should just be mindful of what we say to our children and how we talk to them, and teach them it's not okay to bully somebody and teach them right from wrong, or there are consequences.
I mean, you said something earlier about Xbox babysitting. I get that. I mean, sometimes the girls would sit in front and watch DuckTales, or they would watch, Beauty and the Beast. They would watch a videotape. I get that. Sometimes as a parent, you need that. I understand that. Yeah. But I go back to this. When the girls were watching Full House, the youngest one started mimicking. And me being the parent that I was said, okay, we're not watching that anymore. What do you mean? We're not if you're going to pick up that, you're going to start being sassy. We're not watching it anymore.
Yeah.
And then we went over, second husband, went over to babysit his two nieces and they're watching Hannah Montana. And I'm sitting there going, and this is Disney? And they're very rude and very obnoxious. And this is what our kids are being spoon-fed.
Yeah.
And we wonder why we have attitude problems.
Yeah.
And I mean, people can come at me for this, but Disney is not the Disney I grew up with where everything was all nice and pious. Now it's, what are you teaching your kids?
Well, and now with the World Wide Web, these kids can get into any YouTube channel unless it's parental controlled. And the amount of stuff, I just happened to sneak up on Brady a couple times. And I'm like, I went out to my husband. I'm like, do you see what he's actually watching? I'm like, go get that shit away from them, because it's
Well,
like,
there's talk that 8 and 9-year-old boys are watching porn, and the problem is this sets up false expectations when they get older to think that this is what is expected, this is what sex is supposed to be like.
right.
And in some cases, that's not exactly what sex is going to be like.
No, not at all. Not at
But
all.
I mean, and as a parent, that's why I'm like, I feel sorry for parents now, because there are so many things against them, against you, that you, how do you fight it? How do you police each battle? I mean, my worst thing was the girls had learned about sex through somebody at daycare, and they wanted their dolls to have naked sex, and they didn't know what that was with their New Kids on the Block dolls. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, yes, I'm dating this whole thing, but that was the big scandal, is walking by the room and hearing them laugh and going, what's going on? Michelle wanted the Barbies to have sex. Excuse me? What are you talking about? Go take a little one. What's going on? Oh, well, it's when you lay on top of a man and a woman naked. When they lay on top of each other naked. I'm like, oh, there's more to that, but we're not going to go there. You're too young. I think she was 7. And I was just mortified, because it's like, I didn't know anything about that at that age.
Yeah. Oh, that is so true. And well, as being the stepmom, I don't have the last say.
No.
I that's between like
Mm-hmm.
the mom and dad. So I'm just here as a to be neutral and to give my opinion, to help guide.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but yeah, like I see this now, and I'm just like, oh man, we are gonna be in so much shit in a couple of years, like if we don't nip this now.
Well, and I mean, yes, this is going to be a conversation where if you don't want to talk about it, it's fine. But I mean, our generation, we didn't sit, while we may have had some outlandish things, we
Yeah.
didn't sit there and go, well, I'm still a virgin because I didn't do that. I did oral or anal. We didn't do that. Now that's a big thing, and it's like, really? But
Yeah.
that's how we're getting around it, and it's just like, I don't know. I don't know what to say. I'm just
I don't even want to be around for this next conversation, considering we've well, I thank God my husband's gone to bed, but it was there was a conversation. Can you tell him to put it away, not play with it? You know, can you tell him to just play, especially not in front of mom, right? Like
yeah,
hide
yeah,
it. Go
yeah,
to your room, do
yeah.
something, right? So my husband had to have that conversation, but I can't imagine my husband having to have the sex conversation with them. But it's just he knows it's his job, but it's just here's a magazine, son. I can
Yeah,
just imagine.
it's one of those things. I remember we're trying to have the youngest one when she first moved in. When they first moved in with us, she was having accidents, and so at the times, always was advertising wings to protect from accidents. So here I have, yes, yes. So here I have a 5 and a 7-year-old, and the 7-year-old decides to say, "Mom, wouldn't that help Jessica?" Okay, so here I have to go into the feminine hygiene products that I own and go explain and sit down and say, well, when you hit a certain age, this is going to happen. This is what that is for. It is not for what your sister's doing.
Oh, that's funny because I got my period the first time at my grandparents. I was
Really?
12 years old.
Okay.
My mom, my grandmother, my mom's mom had been trying to tell my mom all along, you got to have the conversation with her. She's going to start soon. She's going to start soon. My mom was too embarrassed. My mom refused to do it. My mom's the type of person that would and then she's on the toilet, and then, oh, Dawn, can you go get me can you run to
Mm-hmm.
the store because I don't have any pads left? That was my
Mm-hmm.
mother.
Okay.
So I'm at my dad's parents, and we were supposed to be there for the weekend, and it started. I had no clue what was going on, so I don't even know. Back then we didn't have cell phones. Back then it was like the home phone.
Mm-hmm.
So managed to somehow, I don't remember. I called my parents somehow, and then my grandparents somehow something happened to the TV. So I used that as an excuse, know that I needed to go home. I couldn't stay there anymore because I needed to go home because grandma and papa didn't have TV. So by the time I get home and explain what had happened, well, then my mom's all upset. My dad had to calm me down. My dad's the one that went out
Oh,
and bought it. And, I have the conversation. So it's just like, maybe it's a good thing I don't have kids of my own because I don't know how I would handle that. Like, I've helped my brother raise his two boys,
yeah.
but I never had to have the conversation. That was up to him to do that. But still,
My mom, I hadn't started yet. I think I was 13. I was getting ready to go into freshman in high school. And we stopped somewhere. We're going to go to a movie. And she gets back in the car and she's like, here, I got this for you. And I'm like, it was a Kotex belt. And by that time, we didn't wear those anymore. Never used it. And I'm just like, what is this for? Oh, for your period. Okay. And what is, oh, you'll know. Okay. No explanation. And then, of course, sex ed at a Lutheran school is called Take the High Road. And that's just I used to have the book still because it cracked me up because it was abstinence. That's all they wanted to teach. But yes, they divided the girls and the boys up, but yet we learned about anatomy. And then, yes, it was just kind of like, really? So it's called Take the High Road. Okay. Like, you're really going to do that. But that was it. Sex ed was 8th grade and 7th grade. You got to see, if your mom let you. My mom did not. She was pro-choice and she didn't want me to go get traumatized. You could watch the abortion videos that they would bring in. So she's like, no, you're not participating in that. I'm like, okay. So let's traumatize, 7th graders with aborted fetuses.
I remember the banana with the condom.
No, I don't remember this.
No, well, in school we think that's how had the sex talk. You use the banana and the condom, and they showed you how they put the banana, the condom on the banana, and that was the only sex talk I got. I still haven't got the sex talk from either parent.
But you see though, at least you knew about protection. I had to take the high road.
High road.
So that means no sex, no condom, no. Take the high road. Yeah, okay. And that could be construed a lot of ways. Are you high or what are you doing? I mean,
right.
that was the Lutheran school I went to. And yeah, I don't think I ever really fully had the sex talk either. I don't think our parents, my dad's version of a drug talk, the anti-drug talk was, I was 21. I had gone down to New Orleans to see Duran Duran. And he tells me, he's like, well, I'm just going to tell you this. Don't do drugs. I've tried them all. They're not good. Don't do them. Okay. So you've tried them all. I didn't even go after him, but say, so you've tried them all. I didn't even bother because I knew he would not answer.
Right.
And I trusted him because he was a party guy. So I was like, okay, so yeah, you've tried them all, Dad. That doesn't say much about, father figure. Say what? Of course, my dad was the man who dropped trow on the back of a pickup truck at a St. Patrick's Day parade to put on a pair of bikini underwear that he caught.
Oh, wow. Well, my dad went to Woodstock, so my dad's tried it.
Cool. That's pretty cool. I went to our generation's Woodstock, which was Live Aid, right, which was awesome. But that's a story. Woodstock you can be proud of. Dropping trow on the back of a pickup truck and on Canal Street. Well, that being said, he did save a person from a burning building when I was a kid, a baby. So that I'll give him credit for. So, but yeah. Yeah.
That is awesome.
What, the underwear part?
And now I have this visual.
No, I'll give you a really bad visual. And yes, this is digressing into a really bad conversation, but technology is a wonderful thing. Mm-hmm. I live here and my dad lives in New Orleans. And a few years ago, my stepmom's like, let's do a Skype call. I'm like, okay, that'll be cool. I'd really like to talk to dad. That'll be awesome. So she's like, well, dad, your dad's getting a shower. As soon as he's done, I'll call you. I'm like, okay, fine. You should know where this is going. You really should know where this is going a mile away. So we're sitting there, we're talking. He's in his robe and we're just talking. He's like, well, I'm tired. I'm going to go to bed. Okay. He stands up and he disrobes. It's just like, no.
Oh my God.
I don't need to see this. Don't.
I thought you were going to tell me instead of just robing that when he got up, the ropes opened.
No, he disrobed. He disrobed.
He was mooning his baby.
He did not realize he was not off camera. This is the second time, unfortunately. There was other time he had gone to a Christmas party and the girls and I were staying at his house. And I told the girls, I'm like, well, I want to sleep in because we're going to be leaving. So you can go in the living room, watch some TV. Once again, parent TV. We do this occasionally.
Yeah.
And the girls come back in and they're looking terrified. And I'm like, what's wrong? Something's wrong with your dad. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, he's out there, but something's wrong with him. Okay. So you stay here. I go in the living room. There's my dad laying on the sofa naked, drunk and naked.
Oh my gosh.
I'm just like, okay, no. So I go back in the bedroom and starting to get ready. And he wakes up drunk and he wants to go to breakfast. And it's like, okay, he had gotten dressed before he came and got us. But it was just like, yeah, too many things I don't want to know or see. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I've had to help my dad. He was in the bathroom and he had just had a procedure done to remove something.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in the bathroom, went to go stand up. Well, where the incision was, he had to wear a pad to protect that area. And when he went to the bathroom, it ripped off. Well, the pain was so intense, he passed out naked onto the floor. So we can hear him drop. And we're trying, keep in mind, they lived in a mobile home, so it's very small, and we're trying to get into the bathroom, and we're hitting the bathroom door off his head, trying to open it up. He's passed out on the floor. Finally, I get enough, and I'm like, I said to my mom, I'm like, hold up, let me scoot in there. So there he is, buck naked with everything flying out. And I'm just like I'm like, come on, let's get you up off the floor. I don't know how many times I've had to help that man off the floor or do something.
You see, but that I get, because I had to end up wiping my grandma's derriere. There's things when people are sick, parents, grandparents, you understand it's not a problem. It's when the free show happens that for no reason, that's when there's a problem. It gets to be a little bit more, the thing when you're taking care of somebody that's sick, you're a little bit more understanding. But the other thing is just kind of like, yeah, no.
I can honestly though, with my dad, the way jokester that he was, I could see him doing that. So don't feel bad.
I'm sure the weirdest thing, and yes, the people are listening like, okay, this is way off the rails. The weirdest thing was when my mom died and I'm going through her stuff and I find these two large vibrators about like this, the single massage. And I look at my first husband and I'm like, what the hell? And my stepfather comes and he's like, oh, your mom used those on me.
Oh!
No, no. I don't want to know this.
Oh my gosh.
Exactly.
That's hilarious.
You're like, I think I was 22, 23 at the time. So it's like, I don't want to know what she did with them, but they were really long. So I'm not sure what was going on.
Wow.
But anyway, now that we've digressed,
I don't think I ever have to worry about that. I don't think my mom owns one. I really don't.
May surprise you.
Wow. I would be shocked.
She may surprise you. You never know.
And as for her daughter, I hope the hell she gets rid of it before she dies, because that's not something I want to touch.
Well, there was always that thing about, guys used to say, they would have a buddy to come in and get rid of the porn collection.
Right.
Yeah. Well, my husband's dead and I have some porn from him. And it's like, okay, so what am I going to do with this? Yeah.
They might get some good buck for it on the open market.
How am I going to sell this? I guess there's sites.
I'm sure there's sites. eBay has everything.
I don't know that eBay sells porn.
Or do you have a buy, sell, and trade in your area?
No. But the lovely things I have a battle axe. And I have some swords because my husband liked all this kind of things. And it's like, all right, so what am I supposed to do with this stuff now?
Whips too.
You can't exactly sell them on Facebook.
No, that's true.
When people come into your house to pick up a weapon. So, yes, now that we've really digressed, I'm sorry. I apologize.
When my grandfather died, he had guns. So we just called the local RCMP to come get them, and they were okay to do that.
That's a little bit easier, I think. Guns they have more control over, but the other kind of cosplay, Ren Fair type stuff, it's a whole nother gamut to get rid of. Yeah. There's not like, oh, there's a Ren Fair store. Let me go bring this over here and go, here you go. It's not going to happen, unfortunately. So that was the end of part 1. Hopefully you stick around next time. Next time on the Better 2 podcast will be part 2 of Dorothy Graham Dell. Yeah. So anyway, now that I've been a little cheesy, I hope you enjoyed that part. I think talking about weight loss and the fact that there was so much pressure put on us about image and what we're supposed to look like, and there's still that today. I think it's something that we need to eventually work through and work on, and how do we prevent bullying? There's so many different topics here to unpack, but I don't want to get to really unpacking them until you hear the second part of the podcast. While you guys were wondering where part 2 of the Dorothy Graham Odell episode is, well, it's attached to part 1 here because there were some censorship issues, and certain people didn't like what was being said. So to save grace, I just edited all that out, and here's the rest of the episode attached to part 1. Hi, gang. Welcome back to part 2 of the Better 2 podcast with Dorothy Graham Odell. And anyway, so today we're going to dive into some of the more controversial topics. Something about the pandemic. Yes, and we even talk about vaccinations. And I know that's a hot button for some. And if you get too riled up, you don't have to listen. You can skip this episode. But I think there is some information that you might find interesting because we have a Canadian perspective and a US perspective. So, we talk about a lot of different topics, and I think that overall it's a conversation that some people are scared to talk about. So give it a listen, see what you think. And I'll give you an email at the end of the show if it really bothers you, so you can reach out. So enjoy. So you mentioned you have a podcast. Is that correct?
I like to call it a live show. So yes, I do. Because I see it going to TV. That's like how I envision I want it to go forward, right?
Okay.
So yeah, I'm kind of weird that way. But
you're manifesting, you're creating, you're visualizing.
I'm creating and manifesting that I will be the next Oprah Winfrey. Yes. So that's what it is. So it is Monday nights. It's 7:00 Eastern Standard Time, and it's called Unstoppable Overcomers. So I showcase other people that have, overcome. But I like to not only showcase what they've overcome, but how they helped others doing that as well. I just think I'm a big proponent of giving back. So, but we've had so much fun. Like I had a veteran on my show last night that storyteller galore, and it was incredible. So I haven't done, most of the shows are kind of like real raw. real, raw, and authentic. But then I've also added an element of the show. The last 15 minutes is supposed to be the fundamentals. So what are people's 3 fundamentals that are like non-negotiables on how you live your life? But it has to be fun, and then and then mental. So yeah, we put a play on the spin, but my partner is sick. She came back from Utah sick. Oh, no. I had no voice last night. I was like sucking on halls, and it was like something else last night, but you know, the show must go on, like, you know. So yeah, it's I have fun with that. I've met a lot of incredible people. I'm sure like you have as well, that are just really the world needs to hear their story. And
exactly.
So, you know, I help them in my coaching business. I help people get to a point where they can share, and then eventually I'll have them on the show. Is nice. My circle of life.
Nice. Well, I mean, that's part of the reason why I do this. It's like, if somebody can learn something from you, there's a story I share or a story you share or whoever shares, if it resonates, then I've done something. I've done something with purpose and meaning. Exactly. And that's kind of the reason why I'm doing this. You know, if you don't,
my goal is to reach one a show. Eventually, 1 million people living their true authentic self is my goal, but reaching one.
It all starts with one person, but that's the thing. People have to be willing to face themselves, and that's a hard thing, as you know.
Yeah.
It's a very hard thing. So you have another book coming out. When is that coming out?
I do. Well, it's in the final stages. I have a workbook, the 7 steps to becoming unstoppable. And living a life with less stress and more fun, because I don't know about you, I hit my 40s and it's just like, I need to have fun now. I spent my first 40 years taking care of everybody, so my next 40 years are going to be having fun. So I'm putting the final touches on that. I actually just got in touch with somebody to say, hey, can you do a design for me, and let's get this out to the world, because it's been sitting on my computer for far too long. Yeah. But it needs to get out to the world. So, because I'm finding a lot of people, you know, have been stressed out and being unfulfilled, like alive but dead inside, as they're walking down the street, as I use the analogy. And people just need to, you know, bring the fun back in their lives and have that fun.
I think we, you know, going back to the 80s for a second, we didn't have all the pressure of, oh, everything's got to be documented. Everything's got to, I mean, granted, yeah, we had a video camera that we brought around a couple of times to the mall, but we never really over documented anything. We lived life and enjoyed life and enjoyed the experience. It wasn't, let me document everything. Let me take a picture every moment of the day. Sometimes I wish I would have memories of those, but I think there's just so much pressure now with the economy getting hinky and the pandemic and, you know, being under lockdown. I think people have kind of, their behaviors have gotten out of hand, going back to the anger and everything. I mean, somebody going off on somebody because their smoothie's not right.
Yeah.
You know, come on. Yeah. Come on.
That is so true. And well, where I'm at, like the homelessness has tripled. And then because people are being locked down and things and losing their jobs and their livelihoods, the mental illness has gone off the charts. I mean, and drug addiction. Mm-hmm. We don't have enough beds available in my city to even cover a third of what needs to happen. So there is, since Christmas, there has been at least one a day, 1 to 3 a day that I'm hearing that are dying on the street, dying from overdoses. Fentanyl is a huge where I live right now. I guess it's insane the amount of people that are ODing on fentanyl. And so I had actually gotten to a point where I was afraid to even open up my Facebook because I belong to certain different
Yeah.
groups and within my community, and I'm like, it's depressing. Like I can't even look at this anymore, and so yeah, there needs to be that change, and so there was supposed to be a rally on the 15th here where I live, to acknowledge the homeless problem, but to also give the solution. So I'm also going to be using my show to showcase that and
Nice.
be doing some live streaming right from there. So that, I mean, I know there's homelessness everywhere, but if we could share to the world what we propose, that could possibly help somebody else in Illinois or wherever. So that's why I'm really wanting to get out there and advocate more for these people and to help. Like we even have youth that live on the street, and people. I mean, I know that's not just in my neighborhood; that's everywhere. But people don't, because they live in their shoebox
Mm-hmm.
and they don't think outside of the shoebox. They just think, oh, now I can't go out and get my ho-hos or whatever because we're on lockdown. But think about it. It has been minus 14 degrees here
Mm-hmm.
for weeks, and our kids are out on the street. I
Yeah.
have a problem with that. I have a problem with that. I have a problem with having somebody OD every day for the last every day for the last 3 weeks. I have a problem with that. Where our mayor just sits there and not addressing the issues, and more people are dying. I have a problem with that.
I had a friend, or she's a friend now. She's running for Senate in California in 2024. And she talked to some homeless people out there. And she told me something that I was not aware of, that most states actually give bus tickets to homeless people to send them out to California because the weather's good. But she told me, she's like, I talked to a guy who was an accountant. I talked to, I think she said, a scientist. And the fact of the matter is that they were doing drugs because they never did drugs before. But after they lost their job because of a health issue or something, and it's like, okay, there's no safety net. They lose their job for their health issue. Now, where do they go? They're homeless. They were doing drugs because it's, especially the woman, she said she didn't want to fall asleep because she was terrified if she fell asleep, somebody was going to steal from her or rape her.
Yeah.
And these are the things that people don't address about homelessness. They just think, oh, well, they're mentally ill. Maybe they're not mentally ill. Most likely they're not mentally ill, but maybe life got so bad and we are so worried about beefing up the military and the police presence that we don't care about the rest of society. We don't care if you don't have enough money to live in a house. I mean,
the cost of living where I'm at has like skyrocketed so much. Like we thankfully we're able to buy this house just before the pandemic hit, and we paid way too much for this house. We paid like 100. We paid, I think, $60,000 more than the asking price just to get into it, and it's a 1950s home. I live on a major road where it is like ambulances are 24/7, and I'm just like, now I know why they wanted to get out of here. And literally next door has a pool in their backyard, wanting $500,000 for their home. Rent for a one bedroom apartment, I think, without utilities included, is I think like $1,200 to $1,400.
A studio in my town without utilities is $850, and it's a small town.
Yeah. So, I mean, you really need to have a $30 an hour job right now in order to be able to afford rent or mortgage, your car, food on the table.
Oh, you really have insurance.
Car insurance, house insurance. By the time you pay for your basics, you've got nothing. With the pandemic, there have been so many restaurant owners that have lost their everything. Sitting at a Walmart in their car or getting a trailer, sitting at Walmart, and that's not what they have to live in because they've lost everything.
I guess I've talked your ear off because we've been doing this for almost 2 hours now. Anyway.
I have thoroughly enjoyed this, though. This has like been awesome.
This may be a two-parter too. Anyway, so Is there anything that we did not talk about that you would like to add?
We've talked about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. So
yeah, baby.
In one capacity or another. Oh wow! I just really thank you. This has just been fun. Like normally it's this is the first show that I've been on where it's been like this, and I love it. It's been refreshing. It's what's my soul has needed. So thank you very much.
I'm glad. It makes me happy when my guests tell me that they've had a good time, and I hope the people that are listening get a good laugh from it too, and maybe a trip down memory lane and groan when we talk about other things. But you know what? It's conversation. So
exactly.
I thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, my pleasure. I love it.
So thank you for sticking around for part 1 and part 2 of the show. It's, like I said, it was an interesting conversation as far as we had that whole different perspective. And even though we live in 2 different countries, the perspective is actually kind of similar because both of us kind of agree that we need to quit living in fear. And we also agree that we need to figure out a way to stop bullying, stop homelessness. We need to look at humanity instead of looking at how, people aren't disposable. We need to look at how we can help people, how we can make a difference in people's lives. And, maybe not have so much anger in the world. If we didn't have so much stress and so much anger, and I know that seems like a utopia, and you can tell me I have pie in the sky attitude. But the fact of the matter is, if we could all get along and really see the value in everybody, then I think we could all grow. I think we could all have this incredible time in our lives, a time where things will be just amazing and inspiring and artistic and creative. Wouldn't that be lovely? And I know people have thought about having utopia for a long, long time. And I know life is never perfect and there's going to be ups and downs. I understand that. But maybe if we can step back from fear and, dare I say, the Rodney King statement, can't we all get along? We need to try to come together in unity to find a way to live together in peace and harmony. I sound like a really bad ad right now, but I think it's important. I really do. And I think that if we work together to make the world a better place, we'd all be much happier. We'd all be much more pleasant toward each other. Because, dare I say something that Culture Club said a long time ago, in their song, War is Stupid. We are, there's talk of another war. Here we go again. And what is the cost of war? Well, the cost of war is people and money. Who cares about the money? But the thing is, there are people that are going to die. It's not good for the economy. That was something my mother always would say, is that if we go to war, that it's going to be good for the economy. Well, how is it going to be good for the economy? Because the military industrial complex can build more ammunition. They can sell more bombs. They can make money off of that while young people are dying. It's time we move past that. And you can call me a hippie. You can call me whatever. And I'm sure there's some that will. And on that note, yes, I'll get off my soapbox. I enjoyed talking to Dorothy. I'm going to end up being on her show on March 14th. So that'll be fun. And I hope you guys aren't just too flabbergasted by what I've said. And if you don't like what I said and you want to leave me a message or a comment, my email is Dauna, DAUNA @better2podcast.com. It is what it is. And it's not that I'm preaching and I'm not trying to sway anybody, but everybody's got a right to their voice. And I think it's important that we all have an open discussion about the world in general. So if you missed an episode of the Better 2 podcast, like part 1 of this, you can find it at www.better2podcast.com. That's www.better2podcast.com. Yes, sometimes I even flub. And this time I'm actually going to leave that in there. But I hope you enjoyed the show. All of our social media links are on the website. And, if you want to be a guest on the show, you can also email me that, and I'll be glad to talk to you. So anyway, guys, I hope you have a wonderful evening, and I'll catch you next time. Bye. The Better 2 podcast is mixed, edited, and produced by Rich Zai of Third Ear Audio Productions.